Начинаем. Я представлю всех, кто у нас сегодня есть на этой секции и сидит здесь в президиуме. Это Сергей Гордейчик, компания Positive Technologies. Это Духвалов Андрей, лаборатория Касперского. Это Григорий Александрович, институт, как же он правильно называется, расшифровывается, система обеспечения комплексной безопасности. Меня зовут Бандурин Гарольд, я представляю Русгидро компанию. Тематика у нас сегодня достаточно такая, с одной стороны, сложная, с другой стороны, очень емкая. Это безопасность технологических систем управления. Я в качестве некоторой вводной хотел бы сказать, что к технологической безопасности, ну, может быть, и вообще к безопасности нужно подходить как бы с двух сторон. Есть одна сторона, она называется лечение. Это разного рода инструменты, технические системы, регламенты, которые позволяют идентифицировать, какой тип у вас там заболевания или угрозы, и каким-то образом его или парировать, или минимизировать, или, может быть, вообще исключить. Это одна часть. И сегодня в этом направлении довольно много делается всего разными производителями, разными компаниями. Ну, вот, могу сказать про нашу компанию, мы тоже этим занимаемся по мере сил. А есть вторая часть, которая называется «здоровый образ жизни», что на техническом языке должно звучать примерно так. А как спроектировать такие системы управления, которые бы имели бы в себе такие свойства, которые бы позволяли бы большого количества угроз.
And now, considering the big number of threats, we cannot just evade them, but we need to ensure integrity of data and management, no matter what kind of threat we have. We have to respond quickly and objectively. This is one part of what we have to discuss, one part of the problem. And again, one thing is when you are okay, another thing is when you have a disease. Same here. One thing is when you have enough time and resources to deal with the malware you have to deal with the problem, and another situation is when some parts of your process control systems are already out of order. Many technological systems are important infrastructure of the country. It's oil industry, communications industry, transport system of a country, and so on. And in such systems, in the framework of technological security, you have to design the systems so that they are easily restorable. Let me give you an example from power sector. When safeguards work, they are triggered in seconds. But after that, to restore it, it takes hours. All of this also falls under technological security, and it's a big sector. One more thing I'd like to say before I give the floor to colleagues. There's a technological transformation in terms of process control systems. There is a hierarchy where the control systems are linked to generations. Fourth and fifth generations are available. Even sixth generation of process control system is available somewhere, while the majority of them are of third generation. What does that mean? That means that process control systems become more and more complex. Or take smart grid system. It's a huge network with big intelligence and big problems if this intelligence is put out of order. On the one hand, it means a great opportunity to produce the next systems, high-quality systems, with the necessary tools, procedures, and remedies, but at the same time, we need to produce them the right way, to comply with the technical requirements, which will very much enhance the security, considering that the complexity of these systems is enhanced. Our speakers have small presentations, so you could take probably 10 to 15 minutes per presentation, and then we'll just have a discussion over what visions we have, maybe ideas. Sergei Gardechikov will be the first speaker. Good afternoon.
Со стороны, чтобы так более-менее логично построить дискуссию, со стороны обзора текущей ситуации, со стороны анализа защищенности.
Let's first look at the current situation and analyze the security of the current control systems. And let me share our experience with you first. I will tell you what I think about the current degree of security of control systems. Here are the results of our research of process control systems in figures. In this research, we Googled some data, we looked for different types of data and produced a map of available control systems and vulnerable systems we can see in and again, available is not equal to vulnerable. Not very many control systems are posted in internet in our country. Doesn't mean that they are more or less secure. All these maps have been given to computer emergency response team, and we are working since last September to close the gaps in the existing systems. There is a myth that process control system is a system which in no way is connected to corporate networks, to internet. That's a myth. We have already mentioned generations of systems. SCADA, for instance, level is connected to MES systems. MES systems are integrated with ERP. ERP, this is already business level, which should be available to everybody, so that the company's management could look from their iPad at the nice graphs of development of their company. And this is how holes in security shield are being made. What are the most common vulnerabilities? First is remote access. Remote access, it can be left by operators, vendors, or integrators for servicing the system of the process control system. And the remote access is not always protected, and sometimes by remote access you can get into SCADA. Another level of vulnerability is operators and service engineer stations. People working with them sometimes confuse them with their business computers. They connect their iPhone or smartphone to the system just to play a game or something, and they forget about security. This creates additional threats. Because from inside, the process control systems are soft. They don't have a hard perimeter. What else? Inter-network screening. It's a known problem. Sometimes when you get connected to mass networks or corporate networks, you have various gateways. Applied gateways or one-way data gateways. But very often when integrating the gateways, people forget about security, and there is an open channel left. For instance, we made an audit at an oil refinery, and the guy said between the process control network and another network we have an applied level gateway. It was Windows XP with 2 network cards, just putting files from one folder into another one, and that's it. But it was Windows XP without any patch. It was in 2012. It's a serious gateway, but anybody who knows how to do it can penetrate it.
Уязвимости компонентов АСУТП. Дело в том, что ни одна из современных систем из компонентов АСУТП...
Components of process control system are also vulnerable. None of the components have been developed considering security requirements. For instance, the eldest file in WinCC, it was compiled in 1997, and since then it was never recompiled or revised. While the technologies of security technologies and the tech technologies have gone a far way since then. When making penetration test, we saw cameras. It was on Linux. We got connected to Telnet and got into the network. We scanned the network. We saw a 502 DCP port, which was NetBus protocol, and it was already SCADA of the plant, of the refinery. So in principle, the CCTV system was not supposed to be connected to internet. That's why it was integrated into the process control system. But since the security company ensuring physical security preferred internet CCTV because it's easier for them to watch it in real life, that's why it was connected also to internet. And it was also connected to ERP system. We saw a standard user, we got access to operating system, we looked at the network connections when we saw a strange network in which there was again Modbus protocol. And when we made a further review, it turned out that at that time integrators were connecting mass ERP and ER networks into a single network. That's why they turned off all their firewalls for the integration purposes. And if we hadn't identified this problem, it's no guarantee that they would have turned on the firewalls again after their integration. This is what operators do. SCADA, this is a screenshot of one of SCADAs. They exit from kiosk. Look at the document. Turbine. This is a document on how to stop a turbine, and there next to this document there is some document on a network worm and so on. Another problem is fraud.
тех организациях или компаниях, которые занимаются либо транзитом, либо реализацией.
Fraud is either in companies making transit of product or sales of something, like in the power sector, where the smart grid systems are. And in households we have electricity users or electricity generators, or filling station, gas filling stations. You know what the guys working at filling stations are ready for? To save a couple of liters of gas. They change the logic in the tills at the filling stations. It's Windows stations with Microsoft servers, and they get some special software which change the logic of counting the amount due for gas. They have other types of fraud. For instance, if you come and pay and you don't take a cash receipt, the operators, they have dozens of loyalty cards, sort of as if the operator paid for the gas at the filling station, not you, and they get some bonuses and so on and so forth. And all these are types of fraud, of scam, and all this is quite current. What else?
Собрали статистику уязвимости компонентов АСУДП. Хотелось бы продемонстрировать просто как.
Here are the numbers. I don't like such exponential graphs, but this is the number of vulnerabilities per year. And look at the curve, which skyrockets. Before Stuxnet, only 11 vulnerabilities were discovered. Now it's nearly 100. Why? Because everybody got interested in this. Who has most vulnerabilities? It's like in the real world, the bigger the vendor is, the more vulnerabilities it has. The question is not about the number of vulnerabilities, but about the ways of effective repair.
Устранение уязвимости зачастую рапортовать и проблемы достаточно сложно.
Those who cannot repair vulnerabilities, they cannot report on this. There are some vendors who are real serious about it, like Schneider Electric, Siemens. They have teams. Where you can report vulnerabilities, while with other vendors, I'm not going to give you the names, to some vendors you send a report that they have a vulnerability and there is no feedback till you start working with them via some public authorities, because it's serious when there is such a vulnerability in controllers or in process control systems. It's serious. And analyzing control systems, we looked at Siemens automation solutions, like Wonder were in touch, Yokogawa, and you can see here Siemens automation solutions. And you know what? In a month and a half, we found more than 70 vulnerabilities in these systems. Various cryptographic keys, certificates, in various files execution. You know, we have never had such fun since early 2000s. The system is so old and obsolete, you don't need to be an expert to find vulnerabilities. At the first round table here, we spoke about young people If a young guy wants to find a hole somewhere, a vulnerability, you just perform a scan on some latest system and you'll find it.
Мы, когда столкнулись с проблемой с анализом СУТП, мы поняли, что некоторые аспекты
When we started analyzing the ICS security, we saw that some security completely lacking in password security, authorization, remote access. Many vendors don't have this, and we started developing them. You know, probably security, those who publish those standards, Linux and others, SAP standards, but there is nothing like this for process control systems. We see them for Siemens, for InTouch, for TIA Portal and others. So we publish the standards as recommendations for those who don't have such security settings in their security system. And of course we are trying to convey this information via various conferences and like this Hack Day forum. And summing up, our approach is we have studies in order to find threats and vulnerabilities before some bad guys find them. Perform audits of information security to understand how the threats materialize in real world. We test security systems and vulnerabilities using our products. And we help others by our knowledge and expertise in developing their process control system securities. And you see here, you don't wear a security helmet, you don't get your bonus. Same here. I guess we keep our questions till the end of the session. And now let's give the floor to our next speaker. I'm Andrei Dukhvalov from Kaspersky Laboratory. Hi again.
Информация, которую я сейчас хочу рассказать, она просто здорово получилось, что Сергей...
The information I want to share with you, you know, it's good. Now I can speak, and it will be like a follow-up on what Sergey was talking about, so I'm very grateful to him. Now, lots of organizations in Russia and worldwide, on the one hand, to detect the problem, to understand it, and find ways and tools to mend it. I tried to look at the problem by summarizing the available data from other sources. Number one, my task was to give an integral assessment of the issues arising in automated control systems.
Информация, которую предоставляет, на мой взгляд, одна из самых уважаемых организаций в этом отношении.
One of the most respected organizations is and they have a document with such a organigram of all the elements of control system management. It's a general chart showing the components. Programmable logical controllers controlling the equipment. This is the main element, PLCs.
на котором расположено
And there's another level, operators level, where we see operators' workstations. They can control the process.
так называемые ЧМА, это системы
And Chimai, these are the monitoring systems you can see in workshops, various panels, touch screens, and so on. At this level, you also find the systems which save historic data from SQL database, for instance, and others. When we talk about the components of which a process control system consists, we should speak about the protocols as well. And apart from this, of course, operators or people control all of this, manage all of this. What else? Like Sergey said, the automation process control systems, they are not isolated. They are very much interlinked with office networks are linked to internet, and so on.
Такие компоненты, которым можно было бы доверять. Ну, я взял, просто обратился к доступной информации там через интернет.
I wanted to find some really trusted components. I looked in internet and other sources.
Это исследование американской опять же организации Digital Bond,
This information is taken from Digital Bond, US Digital Bond study. They have a good experience in such studies. Digital Bond studied vulnerabilities, like Sergey was talking about. They took five most commonly used PLC controllers and tested them for vulnerability. And look at the table. The red cross means vulnerability is easily detectable and easily abusable. The exclamation mark means there is vulnerability but difficult to exploit. You need to be real experienced, and the check mark shows that there is no vulnerability detected in the test. Look at this chart. The majority of what they studied has vulnerabilities, and these vulnerabilities can be easily exploited. Now, software vulnerabilities. Thanks to Sergey, you already heard something about it. I guess you know about vulnerability of software, right? If you make a search of SCADA vulnerabilities, the search shows 44 vulnerabilities. If you check the answers got in the past 3 months. Sergey showed to you the exponential growth of vulnerabilities number, right? From 11 to 98. So the number of vulnerabilities detected is constantly growing. Here's an example, well, not an example, but just to mention that Positive Technologies, for instance, would earn a diploma from Siemens, for instance. Last summer, Siemens, on its website, published a letter of thanks to Positive Technologies, and this document is issued by ICS cert. Now, let's look at another component of process control system, which is protocol.
Протоколы, которые используются в технологических сетях,
the protocols used in technological networks, you know, These protocols, they were developed so many years ago. The standards of protocols were developed so long ago and without any consideration of information security. At the time of development of majority of these protocols, there was no notion of vulnerability of information systems. Some parts of these protocols were developed in 1980s and 1990s of last century. Yeah, now we start having new protocols, old ones are being modified. Some new authentication means are being developed. In this table, you see information on the following. Each of these protocols consists different vulnerabilities, not in implementation of the protocol, but in the standard. I mean, in the document in which the standards of the protocol are laid down. Personnel. Sergey also mentioned what it means and what vulnerabilities we see. Here you see some recent cases of personnel abusing its authority. Somebody for some personal reasons, they misbehaved, which resulted in certain accidents. So personnel too is vulnerable. This is a vulnerable component. Let's look back at this initial organigram. So, let's mark the elements containing vulnerabilities. And again, this is only based on public sources. PLCs contain vulnerabilities, both software and hardware. Control systems, software and protocols, personnel, we know that, and office software as well. Now look at the picture. Doesn't look too optimistic, right? In this picture, you don't see an element based on which you could build a system, a trusted system of security, right? So the problem is simple. Among all the process control system components, there is not a single one we could trust to build a security system on it. So, where's the solution? The solution is also simple to my mind. Simple in what sense? It's simple in terms of principle, but difficult to implement. We need an element on which we can base the security system. Kaspersky's laboratory, it has been dealing with these problems for quite a long time. After our studies, we came to the following conclusion. A trusted system can be only built based on a trusted base resources such as trusted operating system. It doesn't mean that we want to completely rewrite all the software used by the process control system, but it means that in this scheme there needs to be at least one element that can become a basis for the security system. And the operating system we developed as a result of our research, it It contains the basic principles and basic elements which would make it possible for us to trust the software to be implemented based on this operating system. And here you see one very general slide of the structure of the system, and it shows one basic principle based on which we develop the system. It's reference monitoring. The slide means the following. Any program component being implemented by our operating system, it can be any level, component, drivers, services, or whatever, they can communicate to each other only via a central arbiter who will make a decision in every case whether the communication should be permitted or not. This is the basic principle which will help us believe we'll be able to control all the processes happening in the operating system environment. This kinds of interaction of communication between the elements which are crossed out are unacceptable. And in which place can we use these nice principles we have as the basis of our operating system?
Обратимся опять же к той же самой схеме и выберем из нее какую-то там значимую зону или область.
So we have to find an area in the system, and this reference monitor should be carried to applications level. The information channels between the main components of the network should be controlled by trusted tools, by trusted means. This is a system of sort of filtering. These are not separate filters. It's a whole filtering system which is controlled by the main hub. So, controlling the communication between different elements of the process based on the rules, developed for engineers operating the system, we can see that there is a zone in the process network which will not contain any impacts that can result in its breakdown or wrong operation.
Для того, чтобы правильно сформулировать те самые правила, на основании которых мы смогли бы гарантировать, что технологическая
How can we develop the rules to guarantee that the system works in the framework the right way? We need a language of communication for the engineers specializing in this. In this respect, we also carry out deep research to develop the tools and means which would help us, jointly with the engineers, to develop the language of description of the framework of the processes. Look at this scheme. Here is the approach. Should we go step by step or find and isolate zones to make them technically secure first? When the system works in line with the rules developed jointly with the engineers to make it trusted. This is our approach.
Андрей Петрович, спасибо большое.
Thank you, Andrei.
Я предлагаю вопросы задавать чуть-чуть попозже. Сейчас у нас еще один выступающий. Это Григорий Александрович, Институт системы обеспечения комплексной безопасности. Сейчас он представит свои материалы. После этого разговаривать.
Now we'll listen to our next speaker, Grigory Alexandrovich, from
Уважаемые коллеги,
R&D and Testing Institute of System of Complex Security. Hi, my name is Grigory Alexandrovich. I am advisor to the CEO of system of from the R&D Institute of Complex Security Systems. It's a pity that we don't have process control system owners in the audience, which will make my speech more difficult or easier on another hand to me. You know, the regulatory and standard base of Central Bank of Russia, but not many people know the Gazprom's standards set. Gazprom is one of our main employers, and over the past 5 to 6 years we participate actively in development of standards of security of process control systems. Global statistics show that fuel and energy industry is #1 industry in terms of various incidents detected and remedied. You understand that the funding in the industry is growing, the number of programs implemented in this context is growing. Before we talk about the security standards for Gazprom's process control system, first of all, I'd like to show you the structure of standards and the structure of Gazprom as such, for you to understand the details. So, standards and recommendations of Gazprom, these are levels 3 and 4. Gazprom's documents of direct action, recommendations of Gazprom are issued first to support methodologically the existing standards or for testing the new provisions for 3 years, after which they are reclassified as standards or lifted or cancelled. So, how do the information security standards of Gazprom look like now? You see their different standards and their classification. There are 16 current standards and 5 standards being currently developed this year.
Состав рекомендаций насчитывает 18 действующих рекомендаций.
18 recommendations and methodological documents are there. 5 are currently being developed, and 3 of them will be developed in the coming 1 or 2 years.
Существует концепция применения комплекса документов не просто в библиотеке разложенных по полочкам, а в принципе есть замысел их применения для дочерних обществ.
There was an idea of using these standards, of applying these standards to subsidiaries of Gazprom. But Gazprom subsidiaries have different maturity level in terms of information security. For those subsidiaries with low information security level, they need to comply with requirements to information types and technologies. For subsidiaries with higher maturity level, there is a system of documents for implementation of risk management. Out of these documents, there are documents issued in late 2012, and taking effect since 2013, and you can see them on the slide. There are 3 standards like this. First is incident management standard, service management standard, and organization activities management. Methodological documents related to typical standards for information security. This is for our Gazprom. They have technical solutions and 4 documents that enumerate requirements to information security for modern technologies, virtualization, terminal access, IP telephony, and others. The documents that are currently being developed are the ones here for management of information security, because finally they realized they need it. And there are 4 methodologies that are currently being developed in order to support the standards that are already approved. So these documents will either specify certain procedures or give clarifications. And now we come to the topic of my presentation, finally. So, what documents can be considered as ensuring security of process control systems? You can see here the players in this market, considering players with Gazprom. Here you see documents issued by regulators, by state technical commissions. Next are documents that have been adopted in 2007, and documents of the corporate security service. And here we see at the moment 2 main programs. On the one hand, the standard database is being revised and improved, and at the same time new standards are being developed. Here you can also see on the left the documents that made it possible to see that there are rules for gas line operation and other rules and regulations systematized sometimes for various operations. These are the main requirements they had before 2010. In January 2008, a new strategy of Gazprom informatization was approved, and one of the main tasks was to create a single Gazprom group space. And actually, the strategy provides for integration of processes, of control of technological processes on different levels. In terms of information, it means an absolute connection from the workshop control system with other systems. So what does that mean? Development and enhancement of IT, security in terms of automation of control systems, means that we can ensure remote access to information resources. The network infrastructure can become more complex, but new threats can also result from these processes. In 2009-2013, like I already said, the standards and the requirements to process control system, and you can see in this slide the comparison of the contents of all of them. You can see that the requirements are different and they are in line with the systems they are made for. You can see recommendations which are linked to the process control system requirements, and the documents given in the left part of the slide. For them, you can see references to policies. At the end of 2012, a new document on unified technical solution has been produced. And this shows that the classifier, the very first classifier of information protection means, was created by Gazprom, and here you see the control system. This is personal data control system. We see here 5 typical projects for protection of process control systems in Gazprom, and we'll discuss how it's being protected. Design stage. For the time being, this is just being done for the upper level. Implementation of a number of subsystems has been provided for, but this is like registration, access control, and other things. And here you see by which codes they are being implemented, because there are some of them that cover whole subsystems, and sometimes they And what are the main plans? We can see here for the coming and again, concept of automation of technical processes in Gazprom was developed, and a number of standards to be applied have been identified. The documents on technical solutions have been developed, and all these documents and results got as a result of program of automation of this, and this work should be done by 2012, and they have started this work, and of course in the coming year and a half, the existing documents developed in 2009 will be revised. I mean the requirements to this, and of course we very much hope that Gazprom will agree to this, and we want to forward the recommendations for them in order for them to develop better security for their control system. This was about Gazprom, what Gazprom did in the past few years and is going to do in the coming years. Thank you, colleagues. I guess we can start the phase of questions and answers, because we heard 3 presentations. The presentations have been interesting. On the one hand, the picture looked real gloomy, because we saw vulnerabilities all over, not a single component being safe and secure. On the other hand, we see a number of technologies which in vulnerable environments make it possible to make a viable, safe clusters which would be secured the right way. And there is a very good example of how Gazprom, jointly with its partners, makes it possible to bring order to the legislative framework in this or that perspective. And again, there are a few choices. Choice number one. Oh, let me put it differently. The technical environment is very interesting. It all appeared some 10 to 15 years, which shows that in 10 to 15 years, in natural course, all automatic equipment could be and should be replaced. And when some new things, new wonders appear, probably you'll be able to change something even more often. And then in 10 to 15 years, we'll have a completely safe environment which will be made differently, and having the current tools we have, we need to just know how we want to see the ideal system with ideal protection. So go ahead, say what you think. Let's try to discuss it. Andrei Bezborodov, leading experts for information security from Positive Technologies. My question is to Andrei. Say we have a trusted, unbreakable operating system, but the errors are in the software. The software is written by third parties. And without the software, hardware makes no sense, right? So what do we do with the vulnerabilities and errors in the software?
Очень правильный вопрос и очень насущный, его много кто задает.
It's a very good topical question.
Смотрите,
Many people ask it.
Ну, например, управление технологическими процессами.
For example, in terms of management of technological process, it's quite clear, it's well known, engineers know where are the limitations of technological processes they shouldn't violate. And they have their software which monitors this. But like you correctly said, any soft contains certain vulnerabilities and mistakes and errors. Anybody can take advantage of.
Наша задача была предоставить средства для того, чтобы софт, который там исполнялся, делал ровно то, для чего был написан. То есть для того, чтобы его нельзя было использовать по-другому. Или для того, чтобы он в процессе своей работы не делал что-то не предусмотрено заранее, не запроектировано. И для этого...
If something has not been designed, the operating system has a toolkit which helps you. There's a program module performing some function, and the same module has a number of limitations operating system implies.
По своему объему он гораздо меньше, чем объем реализованной функциональности.
And the number of limitations is smaller than the number of functionalities. So, the small piece, each small piece, each component should be monitored, not to perform more than it is supposed to. So it's like a nervous system which can limit the operation of the system if it's inadequate in a way. But I guess you asked a more tricky question. You probably doubt that sterile conditions cannot exist, right? No, I mean there might be some software which can be imported into the operating system, and the software can have errors. Probably the errors will not be very blunt, but there might be different logical errors which can have some logical consequences.
Я не могу ответить за коллегу, но, скорее всего, так. Но можно я вам верну? Но смотрите как. А есть какая-то идеальная картина, где можно такого типа изъяна избежать?
Is there a way to avoid such a problem?
Попробуйте провести аналогию с человеком. Это же сложное техническое устройство, которое обладает разными типами нервной системы.
It's like a human being, which is a very complex organism, like a complex mechanism, having a brain which is in the skull to protect it well.
Человек же не ошибается, то есть его очень сильно физически надо повредить, чтобы он стал неадекватным. Ну или напоить.
Well, you have to do something to a person to make the person inadequate, either make a person drunk or whatever.
Я могу добавить только то, что система контроля должна быть...
The control system should be simpler. That's the principle. But even that system can have errors. I mean that since software seems to be simpler, the number of errors should be smaller. So we have simple control tools, since we suppose that the software has fewer errors, but nobody can guarantee the complete lack of errors. Okay, if we suppose that from beginning till end we have classical development of a technical system. For instance, you have a model with all of its data storage systems and so on. Security is deviation from the model in this or that way. So if something changes and the data model is skewed, then you have a necessity to find out what happened, where the threat comes from. If you have parallel, if you can structure parallel nervous systems like Kaspersky Laboratory can, you can very easily detect vulnerabilities and stop them, at least learn about this. Yes. Yes, makes sense. Makes sense. The question is where you find the ideal model, how you can develop it. And second question is, will one additional nervous system of control be sufficient to be sure that both elements of the whole system do not break down? That's a good question. And I don't see an answer to this question. I guess we answered your question. So this means that you switch to a new operating system. Is it possible to switch to a new system? For instance, if you have a process control system, if the enterprise has a process control system, can you step by step switch to a new protected system, 10 to 15 years? This is the time of technical revamping. If you start now, in 15 years, you'll be able to build a new and completely ideal system. And by the way, the approach we suppose does not require to throw out the old system and completely replace it by a new one. No, we are introducing into the existing system, which remains in place, an additional component of security. There are antiviral systems which work based on the same logic. There is a data model on which information in the information field is tested. There are certain features of technological segments that have to be considered. Sometimes real-time processes are needed, which antiviruses now do not cover. Are you going to develop some industrial systems? Good question. There are lots of aspects. Well, the existing antiviruses, Russian ones or non-Russian ones, they cannot be directly applied in this case. They cannot be directly applied in process control systems for the reasons you mentioned. The basic reason is that antiviruses, they cover three main goals in information security: security, availability or accessibility, and confidentiality. Antiviruses cover confidentiality, while in automatic process control system cares first for integrity and accessibility of data. So you cannot easily use antivirus software in ICS. We think that there must be some specialized antivirus system, but I cannot tell you anything more than that. Probably there will be such an antivirus developed. We are working on it at least. Thank you. You know what? Control systems, they are not only at ICS level, but also at ERP level. In the food processing industry, in chemicals industry, I heard about this. ERP systems, they also have holes. And there are methods of breaking it. Don't you think anybody is thinking about this? Because there have been no big incidents or what, as compared to Stuxnet. No, I guess our colleagues also from Positive Technologies are working on this. We also saw representatives of APAPAC who also work on this. It's hard to answer for them, but I'm telling you, this problem is in the air. There are some movements in this respect. People are working on this. And in terms of systems, you know, ICS or non-ICS systems, it's difficult to discern ICS systems in telecommunications, for instance. There is a set of data, there are methods of converting data with various feedbacks and so on. The most problematic thing is that the number of links is increasing every year, so you cannot just simply design something for your company, because there are lots of external things which are integrated. It's like in the oil industry.
Имеется ли информация о каком-то желании нашего государства регулировать сферу СУТП, кроме как на уровне отдельных компаний?
And are there any legislative initiatives or development of responsibilities for developers and producers that can apply to industrial control systems. I'm not the one to answer the question because we probably have somebody here who can tell us about the regulations. By the way, in your presentation you mentioned 4 documents.
Написывают рекомендации ключевым объектам, как они называются?
Recommendations to key systems of information infrastructure, which is very close to what process control systems are.
Сейчас я вспомню, в начале года, по-моему, была
And at the beginning of the year, at the website of the Security Council of our country, we saw a document published on information security and automated control systems, something like that. You can check this at the website of the Security Council of the Russian Federation in the chapter on information security.
Конечно, должно быть, я вот как конечный потребитель, как компания, у которой есть технологические системы.
I'm like an end user in a company which has technological systems. I know the issue. The issue isn't solved. The information field isn't protected. The documents. Let me see how to put it.
У нас нет системы управления требованиями достаточно жестких, которые бы гарантировали,
We don't have a system of tough requirements
системы будут защищены ниже определенного уровня.
guaranteeing that technical systems will be secure below a certain level, but 80 to 90% of all equipment is produced abroad. We just assemble it here from components, from modules.
В будущем системы тоже нет.
We also have no requirements to future systems. We need to develop them, but the state doesn't sit put. There are some changes, and it seems that they are going to develop some documents, but you cannot be sure of the quality of documents to be developed. And of course, you should better take care of yourself to have a good document. So we would need to join the process if we want to see a real viable document. One short remark. At the seminars and various events dedicated to ICS security, there are always regulator representatives, like here now. Alexander Kuznetsov, my question is to the last speaker regarding Gazprom standards. We see that it's linked to the provisions of State Technical Commission, which are outdated already. Later on, you said that there will be harmonization with latest documents. Probably we need a completely different approach in this case. Don't you have any other ideas about this? First of all, I did not say that we are now going to harmonize Gazprom's documents with something else by 2020. No, I probably put it the wrong way. I said that in the coming year we are planning to revise the current standards applying to process control system. But who's going to implement anything? We have no idea. We just know that there are documents like stats documents, and probably in the coming year there will be some positive changes. I said we will take the best of what we have, and do you think the regulators will be able to produce such documents, and what do we need to do for this? The regulators exist for regulating something. They have working groups, expert groups helping them. We too are being involved in the process. Now I'm talking about the approach, right? Or you have any concerns? And they are trying to harmonize the existing standards with the documents. How should it be? If I knew. Then you can ask the question to the audience, because what matters is that to consider specifics of industries, companies or regions, you probably have to change the logic when developing regulations. To do so, probably work should be differently structured. This is how I translate it from what you said. The question is, how should this be done? It's a question to everybody. Maybe somebody will give a hint. Because otherwise, you ask a question and you won't have any answer, from us at least. Gazprom, they just revise documents to adjust them to their logic. That's good. Good for them. But they are doing this for themselves without any feedback. And the regulators' role, I don't see it here that much. Excuse me, can I comment the previous speaker, since you wanted some dialogue from the audience? I looked at the documents on C, and there were documents to compare with, the ERD documents and the documents I've seen. The C documents seem to be the best quality ones. They are very detailed, very good ones. So we cannot say that these documents go back to the old ERD series sources. That's wrong to say so, because the methodology of threats, model generation is used, and the quality of the document is much better. And this is already based on latest provisions. You are right. That's exactly what I said. And technically speaking, let me ask a question to you now. What is the threats model? These are the existing systems. We need to develop a model of countering these threats, which means actually we will have to combat the consequence, while we should work to eradicate the root, the cause of the problem. Like my colleague or the previous speaker said, I guess he meant a question of how we can change the system so that we don't have to fight the consequence but eradicate the cause, right? Eradicate the vulnerability, for instance, right? To eradicate a disease, not to fall ill. Then you have to implement countermeasures, But it can be simple, like in common life. Eat wholesome food, have some physical activity, and so on. Same here. Prevention. Well, it can be called preventive, but it's not sufficiently preventive. You know, if on Monday you want to quit smoking or start running, it doesn't mean that you'll start doing that on that day. Don't go away, we'll continue discussion on the topic. You know, the current law, it actually makes you smoke, for sure. If we have issues with the law of personal data, well, we can say that the next generation we will they will not smoke, because it will not be prestigious to smoke, and it will probably be illegal to smoke. You never know, probably so. Oleg Sidov, IT Manager magazine. Colleagues, I'm interested in process control system security issue. For a year I've been asking the following question: who at an industrial enterprise should initiate such activities? In commercial organizations it's understandable, but there might be a minor risk at an industrial enterprise which the business would not care for because it's minimal, but the catastrophe it can result in can be devastating. So who should initiate the action in the enterprise? And how much money should a person spend on such an initiative? Because it's like in healthcare sector. No matter how much money you spend, it's never enough.
На мой взгляд, нужно исходить из безопасности.
To my mind, you should first think about the level of threat. If there is a threat of environmental catastrophe, of calamities, like in the chemical industry, for instance, of course it is the state that should initiate setting up an environment which would make the enterprise to take some countermeasures and also issue a budget. If the threat is that the business process can be undermined, it's a different process. If the business quantifies its risks and understands it has to invest some money to offset the risks, they have to do so. It all depends on forecastable consequences. You have anything to add? Let me give you an example from my life in Gazprom. There are two organizations. There is a group of corporate protection and automatic process control system security department. They sit in different offices. Once we started a review of lower level process control systems from various meters to gas consumption. And we started programming and so on. We got certain documents. We made a model of threads from meters to other components, and we brought it to Gazprom, and there was a meeting. The problem is that the guys turned it all against us. We wanted to enhance the security of elements in gas transportation system. Nobody verbally said names like what we suggested. But they said, you know what? They said you better install more CCTV cameras, but don't poke your nose in the pipeline. I can guess who said that. It should have been the chief technologist. They have a mentality thinking, don't touch anything till it works. Well, that guy kept silent. Anyway, this initiative we tried to promote for a year, trying to establish a trusted environment. They had two pipelines and we wanted to set up another one, but nobody could understand how we could make a third entrance to the pipeline for measurements. And actually we wanted to make another pipeline just in case. But this should have asked about. I don't think we have much time for discussion now, 5 minutes are left. But your question was very provocative.
Назовите конкретно, кто, то есть там в семье отвечает за то, что семья или дети там будут достаточно хорошие, образованные, не вырастут хулиганами.
How can you guarantee that the kids in the family will not grow up to be gangsters or whatever? Who is in charge? Who should be in charge? Father, mother, granddad, grandma. You won't find one person in charge. So it's a problem of the whole family or of a company, right? The question is how this can be ensured. Those who are in charge of information security. And this is a very difficult question to answer.
Тут надо очень высоко забираться, спускаться довольно большой высоты.
You have to go up very high and go deep down. It depends on what capital you are
И никакой
talking about.
безопасности. Вот сделать что но очень быстро, то есть там можно
If it's
было
quick.
его этот капитал вернуть. Промышленно имеет другую природу. Оно находится в противоречии сегодня.
It's one thing, but nowadays the financial capital
Вот как только это
supersedes the industrial one.
самого самой компании. Чем она крупнее, тем
The
она
bigger the
сильнее
company,
занимается государство.
the more it will think about security and the state likewise, but for the time being, it's different.
Об отдельных там позитивных
So now we can just speak about several positive moments.
занимаются безопасностью, они такие очень тихие
Because
герои,
there are
потому
lots of
что
them
продвигают много вещей, а делать это не сидят просто. Ну, не напугаешь. Надо еще
don't
иметь
usually
возможность доказать, что это так и есть.
do
Очень интересно. Поэтому
a lot.
вот сегодня это
You can scare them, right? But these are the people who are in IT, systems control, or other, but they need to have more responsibilities, wider range of responsibilities actually. A question to Andrei. You mentioned you can keep closer to the microphone. You mentioned Sekunia.
Соответственно, хочется поинтересоваться,
So I'd like to ask you,
какая активность ведется в
what
направлении,
activities are currently underway in this respect?
намереваетесь отслеживать
Are you
новые
now
уязвимости для
in Kaspersky laboratory going to monitor new vulnerabilities in order to ensure process control systems functioning? There are lots of experts doing this in the world, like Positive Technologies.
Думаю, что мы сделаем это лучше.
I don't think we will do that better than experts.
Есть организация, Security это компания, которая собирает уязвимости вообще всего софта, независимо от того, с офисами или какой-то.
Security is now collecting vulnerabilities from various kinds of software.
Которые
At the same
занимаются
time, there are organizations collecting
по
statistics
индустриальным системам управления.
on industrial
Там, миссии, я сейчас
control systems.
шифровывается, это, по-моему, Канадский институт.
RISI is Canadian Institute of
Правда, не очень актуальная информация, но это единственное. Digital Bonds,
something, Digital Bond, for instance, they collect information about such things. Who else?
точно есть.
But there are others as well, I know.
Эта информация, она, как правило, доступна и открытая. И нет необходимости нам ее собирать самим
And
стоять.
actually, this is information which is in open access. We don't need to collect it somehow.
Исследование уязвимостей
You mean studying vulnerabilities? No.
баз данных?
Creation of databases of vulnerabilities, their classification. No, we don't have this. We use the open information, open sources of information.
Спасибо большое, коллеги. На этом наша
Thank you, colleagues. That's the end of our session. Thank you for your questions and thank you for your interesting presentations. You told us a lot of interesting things. We are all discussing it all here with so much enthusiasm, but we forgot to speak about people. People who really stop many things from happening. We forgot to mention that. So actually in technological sector, there are issues, but thanks God there are companies helping out, companies being also major consumers of high technologies, and the market too likes it. So I'm very positive about it anyway. Thank you.